All right, Colts with a pretty big test, to say the least, this week at Lucas Oil, 1 p.m. Eastern, hosting the Detroit Lions, a Detroit Lions team who is undefeated on the road so far this season, have won 8 straight games, and needless to say, it does not take a genius to figure out that the Colts have their work cut out for them in this game. Now, the difficult part about watching this one as a Colts fan, amongst many things that might be difficult come this Sunday, I am a football fan just as much as I am a Colts fan, okay? And when it comes to football and watching football, the Detroit Lions, about as fun as it gets when it comes to watching a football team. I mean, this offense that they have been able to develop, damn near perfect football from the Detroit Lions on the offensive side of the ball. The balance that they have been able to create with really both the talent at the skill positions and the offensive line, it is just a beautiful thing to watch. Even more beautiful when they beat the Jags 52-6 and the Titans 52-14 and the Texans in a bit closer of a game, 26-23, where Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. But now, unfortunately, that beautiful thing is coming to Lucas Oil Stadium, and now it is our turn. Now, one of my favorite things about the Colts overall, it is probably one of the most aggravating things about this team as well, and I think many of you guys will agree with this statement. This team has developed, and I don't know if this starts at Chris Ballard or if it's amongst the players itself. I think just organizationally, right? Just kind of the way we build through the draft, some of the impact players we have, maybe not being highly touted prospects in the draft and kind of their journey up to the top. You think of the Kenny Moores, the Zaire Franklins, the list goes on and on for the team, right? They've developed an underdog mentality, and dare I say even the identity of this team is that they're the underdog. They're very, very comfortable in that space. The less you expect from the Indianapolis Colts, the better they play. And then when you expect them to play well, they tend to disappoint you. Now, listen, that may be a conversation for a different day, whether or not we like that. But when you talk about a game like this against the Detroit Lions, I suppose it would bode well, in theory, for their chances of this being closer to the Texans game of 26-23 as opposed to the Jaguars or the Titans game, where, I mean, the Detroit Lions just came in there and just robbed them, right? Completely mugged them, jumped them, beat them up like a lion dragging the gazelle through a desert, right? I mean, they really put a beat down on those teams. And you look at the injury report coming in, overall health-wise, the Colts probably going to be missing Bernard Raymond again, of course. That is definitely a big deal. Blindside tackles in the NFL, not really plentiful. There's only so many very good ones. Bernard Raymond happens to be one of them. But you look at the Lions, and they're missing Alex Anzalone this week. All is fair in love and football, right? So ultimately, you can't use that as an excuse when the Colts generally kind of looking healthy across the board. Of course, Ryan Kelly not at center as well. But again, I'm talking about in terms of guys that were potentials to play this week. Both teams overall looking pretty healthy, all things considered. So we're going to talk about a world where the Colts win this game, which is very unlikely if we're to be fair, and what things they'll have accomplished to have made that happen. The playoff implications for this game for the Indianapolis Colts right now, the Colts sitting at 5-6 at the 8th seed in the AFC. The Broncos right now at 6-5 against the 7th seed, or rather, they are the 7th seed, playing the Las Vegas Raiders. If we assume they win that game and go 7-5, and we were to lose this game to Detroit and go 5-7, that puts a 2-game gap right there for all the math nerds right there. So needless to say, this win is huge, or the potential of this win, just huge for the Indianapolis Colts, not just in terms of the confidence that this team would gain from it at this juncture in the season, but the math of us making the playoffs as well. This win would potentially shift the entire season. So we're going to talk about what that may look like. But before we do, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching on YouTube and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help us get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. Subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're trying to get up to 3,000 subscribers throughout the course of this season. We have a little bit of time left. I think we could get there. If you're one of the people that keeps coming back and enjoying it, maybe today's the day you subscribe, maybe not. For the loyal listeners, as I always say, well, actually, I don't always say this. That's a lie. I was just talking right there, okay? The most important thing for this show's growth is you guys. I'm sure you have friends that are Colts fans. Maybe they know about the show. Maybe they don't. The odds are they don't. If you think someone else would enjoy the show, share it with one friend. The most important thing to this show's growth are you guys on the other end. But without further ado, let me stop asking you for things because, hell, what the hell have I ever done for you anyway? All right. And we're going to talk about this game. And right off the bat, you want to talk about the Colts winning this one, the turnover battle? If you don't win the turnover battle, if you're the Indianapolis Colts, you're basically dead in the water. Houston did a great job of forcing turnovers against Detroit, but they ended up committing them right back the other way. The Lions, +9 turnover differential this year. The Colts -1. We know the Colts are a team that is pretty good at forcing turnovers, but it's going to be up to the offense to protect the football. And make no mistake, when you talk about the Colts' chances of winning this football game, it basically comes down to the offense entirely. And I'll explain what I mean by that because, of course, the defense has to perform. But ultimately, the defense aren't going to be stopping these dudes throughout the entire game. That's just not how this is going to go. Can we hold them to only 3 touchdowns? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable standard to hold. Is it a reasonable expectation? Maybe not. But is it a reasonable standard to look at the Colts defense and say, hey, can you hold the Lions to 3 touchdowns? And then if they get a couple field goals, great. Okay, the offense in this one, I've said before, and my buddy Asif actually runs the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. For any of you guys who are interested, go ahead and check him out. We were having a discussion recently. Just, we're friends. We live near each other. So it's whatever, right? He put it to me like this. When you're talking about an offense and defense, the trade-off is that 20-point area, right? If your offense can score more than 20 and your defense can hold the team to less than 20, that's kind of what you're asking for. If you're the defense, you're looking at the offense and saying, please score us over 20 points. If you're offense, you're looking at the defense and saying, hey, hold them to less than 20 points. That's kind of the tipping point in a game. In this game, the Colts offense is going to have to put up 30 plus if they want a shot at winning this game. Making sure they actually keep the ball in their hands is going to be a massive part of getting that done. And just really, you're going to have to give the defense a fighting chance. And that's a huge part of it. We know the Colts this year have had a tough time sustaining drives. The Colts getting themselves into these third and unmanageable situations has been an issue all year. It's going to be an issue in this game as well. You're going to have to balance this offense out. You got to get the running game going, not just to keep the defense guessing, which is what Detroit does such a good job of doing. You don't know whether they're going to hand that thing off or throw it 60 yards down the field. It all works together. But if you put yourself in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, as opposed to a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 8 or a 3rd and 9, or dare I say a 3rd and 12 for the Indianapolis Colts, it gives you options from a play calling perspective on 3rd down. And most importantly, you aren't relying entirely on Anthony Richardson to get a win against what many would argue to be the best team in the entire NFL. The more pressure you put on Anthony Richardson, the more likely he is to force the action, the more likely he is to be inefficient, the more likely he is to miss throws, the more likely it is that drives stall out, the more likely he is to commit turnovers. It all works together. That's the beauty of the game of football, the ultimate team game. But when I put it that way, you start to see how something as simple as being in 3rd and 4 as opposed to 3rd and 8, just 4 yards, how that can have an effect on the entirety of the game, both on offense and defense. To recap, the Colts offense, when this game is over, if someone gave you 2 stats coming out of this game and you saw nothing, no score, no yardage, no passer rating, no rushing yards, nothing like that. If someone were to tell you the average down, or rather the average 3rd down distance for the Indianapolis Colts and the turnover differential in this game, those 2 stats alone would basically give you, 80 to 90%. It just obviously not any research backing those numbers. My point is that they would give you a pretty good idea of how this game went. if the Colts are on the right side of both of those statistics, they may very well have won the game, given one more thing happens, and that's when we shift to the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line for the Indianapolis Colts. What a huge game this one is for them. Yes, Detroit, one of the top 3 running teams in football. So that, of course, is one side of this thing. I mean, if you let the Detroit Lions run the football all over you and do whatever they want on offense, they're going to score 35, 42, 50 some up points, right? But even more importantly than the running game, you look at Jared Goff as a quarterback. He has been really sensational for the fine majority of the year. And I believe this dates all the way back to the Rams, because I've been saying this about Jared Goff, not that I had a show or anything, since basically his second year in the league, his first year in the league. When you let Jared Goff just stand there and throw the football, now, of course, every quarterback's going to do pretty good in those circumstances, but when you let him sit there and throw without any pressure, I mean, he is one of the best quarterbacks in football. It does not get much better than Jared Goff with a clean pocket. Jared Goff with a clean pocket, it maybe belongs on the Mount Rushmore of the past 15 years, okay? Like, it's that good. But you get Jared Goff off his spot, an entirely different story. You look at guys like DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Tyquan Lewis looks like he might be able to play in this game. He's been on full practice all week. Kwity Paye, Laitu Latu, etc., etc., etc. This team's entire philosophy is based around winning the game in the trenches. The way this team wins is through the line, both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. So I'm looking at that unit and saying, you guys got to come out here in this Detroit game and take the challenge of what this is personally. It's built through you, okay? Get Jared Goff off his spot. Try to, at least to some degree, get this Lions offense a little bit out of rhythm. And all of a sudden, if instead of, right, back to what we were talking about for our offense, the Lions always being on schedule and being on 3rd and 3, and now you have the play action and the running game and Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, all these guys, for them to, instead of their offense being on schedule, if this defensive line can take over this game for the Indianapolis Colts, which again is kind of the philosophy of this entire defense, you couple that with what I said about the Colts offense and what they need to do to get a win here, hey, your chances not too shabby. In a game like this, surprisingly, you kind of don't mind the Ballard philosophy of building a team, because you play the Detroit Lions. The only way you're going to beat that team is in the trenches. Well, guess what? The Colts, in theory, uniquely built to give the Lions a pretty good fight, but at the same time, the Lions have just been so mean to other teams this year. You don't know exactly how this one is going to go. But again, a huge game for the Indianapolis Colts and a great test to see exactly where this team is at this point in the year. They have a lot of fight in them. The Detroit Lions have a lot of fight in them as well. So if the Colts are going to win this one, they're going to have to do it over the course of all 4 quarters, all the way down to the last 2 minutes, most likely, like they did against the Jets. But I think the way the roster is constructed, you kind of got a shot. You got a shot, but it does start with 1, the offense being on schedule, and 2, the defense and the defensive line specifically making sure that they make life difficult for this Detroit offense so they don't drop 50 on us and run us out of our own stadium. That's the game preview. That's what I got. I would give a parlay. I don't have one. But that's neither here nor there. That's a game preview. Kind of curious to hear your thoughts. Do you have any confidence in the Colts' ability to win this game? I mean, obviously you wouldn't bet on them to win this game. You got to be out of your mind. But do you have confidence that the team could win the game, or are you kind of just like, we're about to get our ass kicked and it is what it is? I don't know. I mean, in hindsight, if we do get our ass kicked, that's going to look like the smart stance, but you never know until you know. My name is Justin. This right here was the Ride the Bench Colts podcast, and as always, go Colts.